You know, we all want to make better decisions, right? Especially when the pressure is really on. But what if the biggest thing holding us back isn't the situation itself, but our own minds? I'm your host, Eric, and today we're diving deep into the one skill that really separates the best from the rest, the ability to think clearly.
So, I want to kick things off with a story that, well, it's not exactly my fondest moment. A few years back, I was working on this project with a business partner and we just hit a wall. We were at a total impasse and I felt like he just wasn't listening to me at all. And the more we argued, the angrier I got. Finally, I just sat down and hammered out this email. I mean, it was a scorcher, just filled with frustration and blame, and I hit send. I didn't even think twice. My only goal, I just wanted the vent.
And, well, you can probably guess what happened next, right? The partnership completely fell apart, the project collapsed, and when I went back and reread that email with a cool head, man, I felt nothing but shame. It was a perfect example of an emotional reaction, not a rational solution. And I'm sure you've been there. Maybe it was snapping at a colleague during a tense meeting or that impulse buy after a really bad day. We have all had those moments where our feelings just grab the steering wheel and take over.
It's funny. We love to think of ourselves as these super rational, logical beings, carefully weighing the pros and cons of every single choice. But the author of the book we're exploring today, Clear Thinking, he argues that's actually a pretty dangerous illusion. Most of the time, our brains are just running on autopilot.
And look, the author, Shane Parrish, this guy knows a thing or two about high-stakes decisions. This isn't some academic in an ivory tower, okay? He's a former Canadian intelligence agent. And in his world, a bad judgment call isn't about losing a deal. It's about people not coming home. That's the kind of environment where clear thinking is absolutely non-negotiable. So after he left the agency, he started the Farnham Street blog, which basically became secret, essential reading for leaders at the very top of finance and tech.
All right, so how do we actually get this elite mindset for ourselves? In this explainer, we're going to go on a three-part journey. First, we'll uncover the 4 hidden mental traps that are always sabotaging our thinking. Then, we'll learn the system to fight back and get that clarity. And finally, I'm going to give you 3 powerful tools you can start using literally the second this is over. Okay, let's get into it.
First up, let's really dig in and identify the enemy. And believe it or not, the enemy is, well, it's inside our own heads. We're talking about the mental shortcuts, or defaults, our brain uses that so often lead us down the wrong path.
But before we do that, what even is clear thinking? Parrish has this brilliantly simple definition. It's not about being some kind of super genius. It is simply the ability to create a pause between a stimulus and your response. Just let that sink in for a second. That tiny little gap, that's where all good decisions are born. But our default modes, they are hardwired to slam that gap shut.
The first and maybe the most powerful trap is the emotion default. This is my angry email story in a nutshell. I was completely hijacked by my own frustration. It's also the reason we overspend when we're feeling great, we feel like we deserve a treat, or when we're feeling miserable and we just want to shop our feelings away. In both of those cases, emotion is in the driver's seat, and logic is nowhere to be found.
All right, next up we have the ego default. Oh man, this one is a biggie. This is that primal, deep-seated need to be right, to look smart, and to protect our self-image, no matter what it costs us. Just picture a leader whose big strategy is very clearly failing. Instead of changing course, they double down. They start blaming the market, the team, the competition, anyone but themselves. Why? Because admitting they were wrong would be a direct hit to their ego.
And this right here, this shows you the 2 paths you can take. When someone challenges your idea, the ego default just screams, "Defend! Attack!" Right? But the clear thinking response is to pause and say, that's an interesting point. Help me see what you see. One path just protects your ego. The other one actually leads to getting it right. So, which path do you really want to be on?
Trap number 3 is the social default. You probably know it better as herd mentality. See, we are wired to conform. It kept us safe out on the savannah, but in the modern world, it can be a total disaster. This is why people pile into meme stocks at the absolute peak, just because of all the hype on social media. It's also why brilliant ideas die in meetings, because nobody wants to be that one person to speak up against the group consensus.
And last but not least, we have the inertia default. This is that deep, deep resistance to change. Our brains crave what's familiar, even if that familiar thing is making us miserable. This is the person who stays in a soul-crushing job for years and years, not because they like it, but because the effort of finding a new one just seems overwhelming. It's the company clinging to some ancient process just because that's how we've always done it.
Okay, so there you have it. The 4 big enemies of clear thinking: emotion, ego, social, and inertia. But knowing the enemy is only half the battle. Now, let's talk about how to fight back. We're going to move on to Shane Parrish's 4-part system for upgrading your entire way of thinking.
So here are the 4 pillars of his system. Just take a quick look. We've got position over prediction, the power of the pause, defining the problem first, and considering second-order consequences. Think of these as a defensive strategy against your own worst instincts. Let's break a couple of these down.
Now, we've already talked about this, but I really have to emphasize it because it is the absolute heart of the entire system, the power of the pause. This timeline here says it all. Without a pause, a stimulus leads directly to a reaction, which, let's be honest, so often leads to regret. But by inserting that critical moment, you interrupt the autopilot. You give your rational brain a chance to get online, which leads to a considered response, and that puts you back in control. I mean, think about it for a second. Can you remember a moment from just last week where a simple 5-second pause could have changed everything?
Okay, next up is this idea of considering second-order consequences. It's like a domino effect. See, most people only see the first domino fall. For example, a company decides to cut its customer service team. The first-order effect? It's great. Costs go down. But the clear thinker always asks, and then what? Well, customer wait times explode. And then what? Complaints flood social media, your reputation gets trashed. And then what? Customers start flocking to your competitor and your sales just crater. What seemed like a smart, short-term move turns into a long-term catastrophe.
All right, we've diagnosed the problem, we've looked at the high-level principles, now for the fun part. Let's actually equip your mental toolkit with 3 simple but really powerful exercises you can use to put all of this into practice, like today.
First up, we've got the default detector journal. Seriously, this is a 5-minute exercise that can totally change the game by building some radical self-awareness. At the end of each day, just think of one decision you made that you're not totally happy with. Then, answer these 4 questions. In fact, you can grab your phone or a notebook right now. Just jot them down. What was the decision? How did I feel? Which default was running the show? And what would the clear thinking version of me have done? If you do this consistently, you become an expert on your own worst habits.
Tool number 2 is all about creating your own personal rule of thumb handbook. These are just simple if-then statements that help automate good decisions in situations that come up over and over again. For instance, my new rule for me is, if an email makes my blood boil, I will wait 24 hours before I even think about replying. You can create rules for anything, like, if a non-essential purchase is over $200, I will wait 1 week before buying it. These rules are like guardrails for your future self. So what's one if-then rule you can create today to short-circuit a bad habit?
And this final tool, honestly, it's a game changer for any team project. It's called the pre-mortem. So before you start a big project, you get everyone together and you pose this exact scenario. It's 1 year from today. The project was a complete and utter catastrophe. Write down every single reason why it failed. This is a brilliant flip in perspective because it makes it psychologically safe for people to voice their real concerns. It totally bypasses the social and ego defaults and lets you see all the potential landmines before you even take a single step.
Okay, so we've been on quite a journey, right? We've gone into the kind of dark corners of our own minds, exposed the 4 defaults that are always trying to hijack our decisions. We've built a system for clarity with 4 powerful principles, and we've equipped our mental toolkit with 3 really practical tools for the real world. But if you walk away with only one thing today, please let it be this. Because really, it all boils down to this one simple thing, the pause. That is the crucial point. Before you react, before you decide, before you speak, just stop. Take 1 deep breath, count to 5. That tiny little space is where you take back control from your autopilot. It's the moment you choose to be the pilot of your own life, not just a passenger.
So, I'm going to leave you with this question. I want you to really think about it. For me, I know exactly where I'm using my next pause. It's going to be in my 3 p.m. team check-in tomorrow, which, I know, always gets a little tense. Where will you intentionally insert that first powerful pause? And that's a wrap on our deep dive into clear thinking. If you found this useful, please show some support by liking, subscribing, and maybe sharing it with someone who could benefit. And hey, if there's a book or a big idea you'd love for us to tackle next, let us know down in the comments. Thanks for watching. I'm Eric, and I'll see you in the next one.